This is The Water Table.
A chance to hear the agricultural side of these issues.
A place for people to go find information and education.
Water management is just going to become even more critical into the future.
How misunderstood what we do is.
I would encourage people to open their minds and listen to this dialogue.
Well, welcome back to the Water Table podcast. Today I have a couple of fun guests and exciting for me to be able to have these two with me. I have my son Harris Dunnick and his cousin Griffin. They have been doing some fun stuff this summer for Prinsco, and I want to talk about that. They have been traveling since early June around the country, looking at different projects in which plastic pipe is used in different applications. And we are naming this series The Road Trip to Resiliency, in which they're just learning and understanding why plastic pipe, why use this product in this application, things like that. And had a lot of fun from what I've heard and a lot of different experiences. So welcome to the podcast, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. We're pretty excited for our first time on the Water Table.
Yeah, well, it's dynamic, so welcome. So let's start just by you guys, I think, did 6 or 7 different trips through the week-long, usually trips to a lot of different locations. But Griff, why don't you tell me a little bit about what location, just a little bit of a snippet of the places you went geography-wise.
So we drove out to Chicago, and then from there we went to Columbus, and then back through to Minnesota. So that was the first week, and then second week we went through Omaha down to Kansas City, and then up through Ames, Iowa at Iowa State. And then the week after that we went to Minneapolis for a couple days and spent some time in that suburban area there, and then up to Duluth from there. And then we went to Salt Lake City, Utah, and flew down to Arizona and Phoenix, and then made it back. And the last trip we went on was
North Dakota.
Yep, up to North Dakota, Devil's Lake, and Fargo.
So the plan was that you were going to do all driving, but we did let you fly out west, so didn't make you drive all the way out there. But so why don't each of you just give me a little idea of something interesting that stuck out to you on the trip about plastic pipe that maybe you learned that you didn't know.
Yeah, I think we learned a lot about plastics. I think I really enjoyed our time in Duluth with Dr. Plummer. We learned a lot about recycled plastics, and I think for our age, recyclability is misunderstood, and people think that plastics are just all bad, and they see all this negative on the news and articles on social media about negatives of plastics, but there really is such a thing as a good plastic. And what Prinsco is doing and the industry is doing is really putting good plastics into the ground, and they're being used for a really good thing to mitigate damages from water.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting to stay there a minute. When you take different plastics that are used and need to be used in different applications, whether it's milk jugs or detergent bottles, whatever it might be, and you can take those and reuse them for a different application, which ends up being plastic pipe for the infrastructure of our rural communities, our cities, our suburbs, and where it can work every day. Like today we're on this podcast and it's raining outside right now, and that plastic pipe is working in its second life. It was something else, now it's pipe, and it'll work for 100 years. And so I've heard that before, that it connects to your generation on a different level than it does to my generation. So I think that's pretty neat that you guys were able to experience that from somebody like Dr. Plummer, who is an expert in the industry of materials.
I'd say for me it was just learning a lot about the storm chambers, and because I didn't know a whole lot about it going into it. And I mean, I'd seen them before, but then seeing them being put together in the ground and just the whole process behind that, and hearing the pros and cons of whether it's the irrigation pond saving land and just being able to put the water somewhere, like, I mean, it's raining out today, but just knowing that it's all underneath the parking lot was pretty cool to see. So I didn't know a whole lot about that before then. But
And do you guys? That's interesting. We'll talk about that in the applications in a minute. But just spurred another question. But because of the road trip, does it feel like different things you do now in your life? You look at it from a different perspective, like when you drive into a Walmart or Target and you think, I wonder what's underneath this parking lot. Does that happen? Or
yeah, definitely. And just even talking with friends or anything, you got people our generation, they're like, if they were driving, we see some pipe and they just like talk about it, whatever, it's getting put in somewhere. And I'll just be able to like actually teach them a little bit compared to what I knew before and show them why it's important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, I think the importance of the systems really is exciting because it's all underground. It's something that is not seen to the public. And Griff and I, growing up as your son, I knew that, plastic water management was important, but you don't see it unless if you're on the job. You don't see where it's at. And it's got a really big impact on the residential building or on the farm site or on the, home site and the septic area. So that's pretty cool to see when you're on site physically.
Yeah, and I think when you say that you don't see it, that's one of the things in the tagline of our Water Table podcast here is just this industry is so misunderstood, and it's misunderstood because you don't see it, because they don't see it, they can't ask questions and they can't try to put it together of how that works, why it works with conveying, storing, treating water. So yeah, that I am glad you mentioned that, because that is a really interesting, when you look at it on the agricultural side, and we'll talk about that too, is all as people see is when they know, there's a job going in, as they see big rolls of pipe out in a field as they're driving by. But then they don't see it again, and it's in the ground, and what it's doing to positively impact that agricultural field to grow a better crop, but also actually store some water in the soil profile. There's so many things going on there. So let's back up though and talk about what you guys did as far as what other applications did you see. We talked a little bit about storm chambers. That was some of the things you saw on I think several jobs, but what other markets did you see?
Well, we went to an agricultural job in North Dakota. We saw that Ellingsons were putting in big main while we were there that day. It was a full section of prevent plant ground that was going in, and it didn't get planted this year because it flooded in the spring.
And that was, I think you saw flexible dual wall being installed.
Yep.
Yep, flexible dual wall was going in the day we were there.
Our Gold Flex is what Prinsco calls that, but yeah, good. What else did you see, Griff?
Yeah, when we were out in Chicago, we saw the golf course, Medina Golf Course, which was like 5 major championships played there. Pretty big golf job, and just seeing how different it's a little bit. I mean, similar to kind of agriculture a little bit. I mean, obviously it's like a lot of dual wall there, and they're kind of gridding it out along the fairways and the greens, and hearing about how different it is in the putting in the bunkers or in the greens and all that, and just seeing it go down to there's a big like pond or swamp kind of there, and it was all kind of leading down to that. So it was cool to see a big project getting done there. So
Yeah. I think you also were in a couple different markets in Columbus. You went to Columbus, Ohio. What did you look at there?
We were with Hal Cassidy in Columbus. He sold a Proform job there. We went to this residential community and saw a basement being dug out, and then they put the Proform in for the forms of the house, and it was pretty cool to see because that entire community was done with Proform, all the footings for every house in the community.
Yeah, and Proform is another product, a neat product that's basically like a plastic 2x6 that you can form your footings for the house by putting them in place rather than wood forms, and then just leave them in place, pour the concrete and leave them in place and use it as your drainage to keep the foundation of your house dry. So again, there is some sustainability, and it's using recycled plastic, and then some sustainability there too of not using the same product for two different applications.
Yeah,
So,
saves the contractor said it saves them a full day's work because the drainage and the form is in one product itself. So that's pretty cool to save time and money for the contractors too.
good. And I think you were on just some pipe jobs too, in the stormwater side. Is that right? Or was it all chambers? Did you see any pipe being installed anywhere?
Yeah, we saw a water detention system with big 48-inch dual wall in Minneapolis at a new apartment complex.
Yeah, good. And then the last thing you did that was different was, Griff, in North Dakota, you also were able to see a Pro 4,
Yeah, Pro 4.
which is our on-site septic product.
Yep. So that was pretty much the easiest way to say it, was just smaller chambers and water's able to enter in through them. And it was, I mean, they were putting in a couple rows of them, and just talking to the contractors and how good. I mean, they were saying that they're better than what they've been using before for that. And they're just such an easy install for them, and watching them do it. I mean, we were there for like an hour and they were already done with all of it. So
Sure, and that's a leaching system away from a septic tank, and we're excited about that product and what that can do at Prinsco. Talk a little bit about what you guys, when it comes to, the theme of this summer was the road trip to resiliency, and how, you've talked a little bit about that already in different ways without using that term, but how do you see differently than you did before, not knowing very much on how plastic pipe is resilient?
I think resiliency for us has really come down. We've thought about it personally a little bit, what's really resiliency to us. And we've seen that through the plastic pipe, this year. And we've seen that plastic pipe is resilient for big storms. It's resilient for shift in the earth, in earthquakes. It's more resilient in the way that it's being able to install is way easier than concrete pipe or steel pipe. It's much lighter. You can store it much easier on site. You don't need as much space because a lot of it can be coiled or it can be stacked, and some of the other products can't be stacked. But I think we've just seen that resiliency in plastic pipe is it's able to thrive in the face of adversity. Whatever it's given, a big storm, shift in the ground, lots of heat, lots of pressure, lots of weight. It's able to bounce back better than other products and really have a lifetime, like Dr. Plummer said, of 100+ years.
And I don't know if this would go under resilient, but just like hearing about the fabrication of like custom fittings, I mean, just that you guys are able to do that and weld those pieces together was pretty cool to learn about this year too.
Well, I think where that goes is the joining system of plastic pipe is far superior to that of concrete pipe or CMP, a corrugated metal pipe. And that's really because, so that would be true too in the fabricated side, but the joining system of Bell and Spigot with a gasket in the tests that we can meet, whether it's just a lab test or an in-ground air test, are far superior to that of our competitors. So that's one place where I think you can say it is also resilient, that I hadn't really thought you guys would come up with that. So I'm glad you didn't mention that, because it is one area I think we can outperform the other industry options. So want to talk a little bit about your trip up to North Dakota and the agricultural side. Usually the Water Table podcast is focused on our agriculture, how plastic pipe is used in an agricultural setting, and what did you guys have come out of that with a different perspective? I know, Harris, you've been on some agricultural jobs with me over the time. Griff, you not so much, but did you have a different perspective on kind of our U.S. agriculture and when it comes to a large project like that, what that does for the landscape?
For me, what I took most out of it is just hearing about how it used to be a giant lake up there, and that the soil is pretty not great from what I heard from them, and just hearing how if this wasn't getting done, that they wouldn't be able to. It would just be inconsistent the amount of years that they'd be able to plant out there. So yeah, spending a lot of money on the system, but I mean their yields will be a lot higher throughout the next couple of years, and over the long term, it'll eventually make more money for them.
Yeah,
compared
yeah,
to,
yeah. And just for our listeners on that is where they were in North Dakota. The geography was really the old Lake Agassiz lake bed that was, during the glacier times, and the soils changed so rapidly because that was an old lake bed centuries ago, and so what happens then is you get really inconsistency. You get areas of the valley, the Red River Valley, that just hold water in the soil profile. The water moves way beyond my ability to explain, but water can move throughout that soil profile, and managing your water with a subsurface water system like what you guys saw just changes everything from the standpoint of availability of that soil. And then when you're up north, a week can make a huge difference. We can get in and plant a week earlier or harvest before, at the right time, that crop will grow and mature at a quicker rate. So that's what it's all about. And, you explained that well, what you saw. And I think when you look at it, what really interests and I think gives us passion at Prinsco around that is the ability to grow a better crop in a place that they've been growing crops. It's not like they drained a wetland there. They didn't do that. That field has had crops on it every year, but they sometimes don't turn out that well. So to grow a better crop, which then feeds more people, which also then the farmer makes more money, and it just creates a much better economy. I've stated that so many times on the podcast around when a farmer makes more money, he pays more taxes. When he pays more taxes in rural America, that goes to more roads and schools and hospitals in the area, and they can donate money to their churches. And it just, if a farmer's making money in rural America, the community is thriving, and that's really important to who we are as a country. So
I think what I learned is that water can be destructive. Ellingtons were talking about the Fargo diversion, and they're pumping billions of dollars to divert the river around the city because it's destroyed so many things up there. And we also really realize that water is essential to life up there. That's kind of part of a massive agricultural area for America. It feeds a lot of the world, like you said. So for Prinsco to be able to put in pipe to really, walk that line of, we're taking this water that's essential for life and we're making it less destructive for the area and using it to grow a proper crop is really exciting and cool. And I think that's what we saw them doing and learned a lot about.
yeah. Well, the apple didn't fall far from the tree when we're talking about the Fargo diversion in a negative way. So the opportunity that North Dakota and Minnesota missed with really understanding what agricultural drainage does and not applying $1 billion instead of $4 billion to the diversion, taking $1 billion of that and just tiling everything south of Fargo throughout the valley would have solved their problems. And they chose to go a different route, so that's done. That diversion will be done in the next few years, so that's not going to happen, but it would have been really interesting to prove that out to be that way. So one of the things you guys were able to do kind of early on in this was head down to Kansas City and interview Dan Kearns from Plastic Pipe Institute. Dan's the director of engineering for the drainage division, and kind of wanted to start there to get some knowledge around how PPI is thinking about things, how they're promoting themselves. And so tell me a little bit about that, your conversations with Dan.
Yeah, we really enjoyed our conversation with Dan. He kind of was the one that started us to think that there's good and bad plastics. He showed us a little video to start that PPI made, showing that when you recycle a bottle, it could end up, in the basement of your house or farm field or everywhere where recycled plastic goes, because I don't think people really think about that. They just kind of put it in the recycling bin.
What you're saying, when you recycle it, could end up in pipe.
Yeah, in plastic. Yep, in plastic pipe under the ground. And he really made it clear that this pipe is resilient, like we've said many times, and this pipe last for 100 years. So to be able to take that plastic detergent bottle or whatever it is, grind it up and put it in a pipe that's used for 100 years is much more sustainable than taking it and putting it back into another piece of plastic that, it's just a one-time use plastic, or it's a plastic that has to be recycled again and again and again, because at some point it's not worth anything and it can't be recycled, or it'll more than likely just end up in, a lake, a river, a stream, in the Gulf of Mexico, wherever it's going to end up, not locked up in the ground for 100 years doing something to help society.
Right.
Yeah, and just hearing about all the different, because he used to work for another different company before, and just hearing all the knowledge on that. And my biggest takeaway was to that video he showed us, and it was meant for maybe guys like us, that not like us, but guys our age maybe, that don't know a ton about it. And just, I feel like what PPI is doing is just trying to get the common person to understand a lot more about plastic pipe in an easier way. Just getting the word out there is what it seemed like to me.
So guys, one thing I'm thinking about and been thinking about since I've known where you've been each week, but you've interviewed some prominent people in our industry with Dan Kearns from PPI and Dr. Matt Helmers at Iowa State, Dr. Michael Plummer up at University of Minnesota Duluth, kind of all on different perspectives. Dan, kind of global perspective on drainage and our industry. Dr. Helmer's really on the agricultural side, which was probably a little bit out of your comfort zones at the time. It was pretty early on in the summer. And then Dr. Plummer on materials and plastic materials. And the question I think that I'd like to just pose you guys right now is, why should young people your ages care about this stuff? And what did you learn from those conversations and from some of the job sites? But really those conversations, I think, is where that made you think a lot. So why should young people care about plastic pipe, care about this industry?
I think there's really two things. First one, that the industry is really dynamic and exciting right now. But more importantly, the products that the industry provides are used to create a sustainable society for an evolving future. We really examined that storms are getting larger and storms are dropping more water in a faster rate of time. And how can that water be managed and collected and conveyed like the products do? And I think we really saw that in Phoenix. Doug told us, the guy we interviewed, it hadn't rained there in 100 days, and they're putting in a multi-million-dollar system to collect and convey water. And they're doing that for a reason. They aren't doing that because it doesn't rain there. They're doing that because when it does rain, it rains a lot, and that water can damage a lot. So I think it's just it's an exciting industry, and they're doing really good things to, sustain our society that's really growing and, mitigate damages from water.
Yeah, I feel like every place that we went to, it seemed like the main focus was on for the future. And a lot of people, young guys our age, don't understand that if you just saw plastic pipe going in, you wouldn't really fully understand why they're doing it. And it's mostly because of just whether it's creating more land space in a commercial detention system or on an agricultural job, putting in that system to produce more yields is just all for the future, and spending the money right now so it can be more sustainable for the future was really interesting to hear. And just hearing how much it's growing and just all the different products obviously you guys have come out with throughout the years. I mean, this industry's growing and is something that I think guys getting out of college our age should be interested in getting into. So,
Yeah, it's interesting and exciting for me to see you guys catch some of that vision and understand that, and see that it's growing in the different products, not only the different products, but kind of it's not like it's a super high tech industry, but there is new things coming to market all the time, which is exciting. Not only maybe the same application, but a different product for that application. So that's exciting. And then, Harris, what you said too around the storms are getting bigger and more rainfall, and that's just a fact. You can't really argue that we're getting, more 3-inch rains or more 5-inch rains than we've had before. And engineers design things for 100-year floods and 500-year floods and 1,000-year floods. Well, when a 500-year flood is happening every 40 years now instead of every 500 years, they have to design things different. And we just so happen, our industry, to have products that can help them do that. So I think it's a place where you guys and your age group should look at as a real possibility to be involved with for a career. What we did this summer by having you guys do this, I'm really grateful that you were both able to do that, and proud of you both that you took this seriously and really enjoyed it. I mean, I think it became where as the summer went along, they gained a lot of momentum around understanding and then getting excited about being able to go to the next place, and because you knew you were going to see something different than you did and learn from that too. So I'm proud of you guys for doing that, and I think that from my perspective, I'm really excited about the opportunity we have to release this series, which we're going to do in a 6 or 7 part series on what you guys did this summer, and see how this can positively impact our customers, the stakeholders within the industry, the engineers. Engineers seem to have for years and years and years been marketed to that our industry is marketed to engineers in just one certain way. So to do this differently and have something on social media that is going to probably be a little bit funny at times, going to show just your world for 6-8 weeks and what happened in that world that relates to that engineering group and why they should spec plastic pipe rather than the alternative. I think it's going to be exciting. It's something new and different, and so I'm happy you guys were willing participants in that.
Yeah, I think that's really what made the summer exciting. It was new and different. Like you said, there's so many applications that Prinsco products are used in, and we really saw new and different every day. I think Griff and I said not one day was really the same, and they could have been using the same product 2 days in a row, but it was every time used for a different application that the engineer spec'd, like you said, which is pretty interesting to go to the job and say, what's exactly going on here, and for it to be different every time.
And especially the people we were meeting too, whether it was like a professor like Dr. Helmers or plumber, and then or just salesmen, and just hearing everyone's different opinions and just taking little bits and pieces from each of those kind of people. Definitely learned a lot over the road trip from that as well. So
how do you expand on this next summer?
I don't know.
You haven't thought about that yet. All right. Well, good. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining me today on the water table. It's been fun to have family and familiar faces as someone to interview, and glad that you were able to learn a lot and provide value to our industry, not only to Prinsco for sure, but also our industry. I think this series and what we're going to do is going to have an impact. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Well, thanks for listening to this episode. I have so much fun recording these. I hope you have as much fun listening as I do recording. These episodes are available on all major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. So find them and download them when you can. Thanks for joining us.